Hi, I'm Jenna RITZ. I'm a designer and my work focuses on the intersection between the built environment and human health. I just completed my master's at the Yale School of Architecture, and I'm thrilled to present my research to you today, titled SensoryHierarchies, an investigation of olfactory architecture. Let's get started. I'd like you to take a moment to close your eyes and imagine yourself on a beach. You feel the warmth of the sun on your skin and the sand between your toes. You can smell the distinct ocean breeze, and the salt in the air is so strong you can taste it. You hear the waves crashing and children playing in the water. As you look across the ocean, you see the distant horizon line where the sky meets the water. Now imagine yourself in a corporate office space. You see rows of desks with computer screens and the bright artificial lights overhead. In the background, you hear the mechanical hum of the air conditioning and the clicking sounds of people typing on their keyboards. The surface of the desk feels cool to the touch, and the air is free of any distinct smells. This exercise highlights how the natural outdoors successfully stimulates all of the senses, but the built environment is designed to stimulate only a few. This distinction is important because, according to a study by the US EPA, the average person spends 90% of their time indoors. This means that a majority of our lives are spent in artificial environments that are not designed for our innate biological senses. We rely on our senses of sight, touch, hearing, smell, and taste to process our immediate surroundings. These senses are complementary to one another and result in cross-modal associations, which allow us to process multiple sensory stimuli in the environment simultaneously. Cross-modality makes our ability to perceive space dependent on the relationship between our senses. Despite this interdependence, the practice of architecture emphasizes visual-based designs focused on our sense of sight. This establishes a hierarchy in Western architecture that makes sight the primary sense in design while overlooking the rest. This approach results in inadequate sensory environments that are poorly designed for cross-modal relationships. Not only is this detrimental to our health, but it also perpetuates inequities in the built environment for those with sensory impairments. But what happens if we challenge this hierarchy in the practice of architecture? How can we design sensory-rich environments for all of our senses that improve occupant health and sensory equity? These questions directed the research to analyze one of the underrepresented senses in the built environment, our sense of smell. So why smell? Although we may not always be conscious of it, the act of smelling, known as olfaction, plays a crucial role in our daily lives. It boils down to this: we have to breathe to survive. The intake of oxygen is necessary to sustain human life. The air we inhale also contains odor information that stimulates our olfactory system. As a result, the experience of breathing is inextricably tied to the experience of smelling, thus making olfaction an intrinsic part of our daily lives. However, there is a long history in architecture to actively remove all odors from the built environment. This movement started in the 19th century as a need to eliminate unpleasant odors for two reasons. The Industrial Revolution polluted the surrounding air and waterways, which produced unbearably offensive smells. And the theory of miasma was widely believed, in which people thought that inhaling this foul-smelling air would spread disease and cause death. As a result, cities created policies and infrastructure to eliminate odors from urban areas. This image is a stench map of New York City from 1866 that identified the source and subsequent path of unpleasant odors. This other image shows the construction of London's underground sewage system as a reaction to the great stink from the pollution of the Thames River in 1858. Although the concept of miasma has since been disproved and factory pollution is better regulated, the residual effect of eliminating all odors from the built environment is still in place and controlled by environmental policies and building codes today. This is problematic because it creates a condition in architectural practice that intentionally suppresses one of our biological senses. There are many reasons why activating our sense of smell in architecture is important to our health and wellness. When our sense of smell is engaged, our response is both physiological and psychological. Thus, the mere presence of an odor has the power to affect emotion, behavior, and physical comfort.
Developing olfactory landscapes into design or a scentscape can tap into these unique qualities of our olfactory system. And yes, I know I am literally talking about smelly architecture, but just hear me out. The olfactory system is different from all other sensory modalities in both its biological structure and method of information processing. In olfaction, the odor information is processed by the sensory cells and olfactory bulb and sent directly to the limbic system, a region of the brain associated with memory and emotion. This establishes a neural foundation for odor emotional memory, and as a result, a strong association between memory and place is developed. This is why when I mentioned the smell of the ocean earlier, those of you who have visited a beach could recall that memory and the emotions and feelings associated with that olfactory experience. Odors provide important information about the surrounding environment, and we rely on our olfactory system and cognitive abilities to recognize the source, known as the odorant. This process allows us to detect food and water, identify people or animals, and signals environmental dangers like smoke or gas. This odor information affects how we behave and respond to our surroundings. Recent studies substantiate that olfactory stimulation triggers psychophysiological responses through changes in brain activity. The assessment of brain functionality through olfactory testing indicates that certain odors produce specific spatial-temporal patterns of neural activity, and that these patterns reveal themselves in different brainwaves. These distinct brainwaves are measures of active or resting brain states and show that odors have a direct effect on our mental alertness. These phenomena of the olfactory system are not considered in current architectural practice. Implementing scentscapes into architecture has immense potential to improve our experience and relationship to interior environments. To this end, I researched constructed precedents designed around olfactory experience that could inform the development of architectural scentscapes. The precedents included any form of constructed space designed for our sense of smell, thus expanding beyond typical building typologies to include art installations and so forth. They also showcased a wide range of odorants, some of which are listed here. The precedents were analyzed against a set of criteria within 3 distinct categories: design, odor, and experience. Building typology, project lifespan, and methodology were reviewed in the design category. Projects that had expected lifespans of less than 1 year were considered temporary, and anything longer was considered permanent. The method of designing the odorant into the space was defined as additive or integrative. Additive elements were odorants added to the space, such as these perfumed bubbles that are released from a sculptural metal tree. Integrative elements are odorants that are fundamental to the architectural design, such as the building structure or finished materials. This example of chocolate wallpaper by Ed Ruscha is an integrative design method. The odors were analyzed in terms of quantity and quality. In this study, quality measures were derived from Dravenik's hedonic tones of odors, which rates odor profiles on a scale of pleasant to unpleasant. In this exhibition by Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro, multiple odors were designed into the space that emitted floral or citrus-scented perfumes, which are considered pleasant. The precedents were analyzed in terms of both physical and psychological experience. Physical interactions with the odorant were identified as passive or active engagement. Passive engagement is when the occupant does not have to disturb or handle the odorant in order to release the scent, such as in this installation where the fragrance oils in the vials are absorbed by the ropes from which they hang and then disperse into the air naturally. Psychological reactions were identified as relaxed or active brain states and were determined by referencing published research on EEG brainwave response to olfactory stimuli and aromatherapy research experiments. Over 35 built precedents were analyzed in the research, which revealed patterns in the design of olfactory experiences. The vast majority of projects were temporary structures, mostly in the form of exhibitions, art installations, and pavilions. Most designs used additive implementation methods, but when more than one odorant was included, a quarter of the precedents used both additive and integrative methods. Interestingly, the precedents were evenly divided between active and passive human engagement with the odorant. And lastly, a majority of the precedents included more than one odorant in the design, most of which were identified as pleasant odors. The results provided insight to further develop the design of scentscapes.
but there are two observations that the research did not address. The lifespan of a building is much longer than most of the precedents observed. How can we design sensescapes that are integrated into the building fabric and intended to exist for long durations of time? The precedents use certain odorants to create experiences or specific reactions. How can we use this information to tune the olfactory experience to improve our health and well-being on a daily basis? The following are my responses to these questions and speculate the different possibilities for sensescapes in architecture.
Scentscapes could play a much larger role in the building fabric. When developing material palettes, architects could consider the sensory properties of materials in addition to their visual aesthetics. If we take this one step further, we could design sensory components or modules that are integrated into the space, such as in this example of a wood baffle system that alters the physical shape and the acoustic and olfactory experience of a typical rectilinear form. Scentscapes could be designed to create optimized environments for the building program and activities. In this example for a public library, the different areas and study rooms have scents that increase alertness and enhance learning and retention. Another example could be a waiting room at the dentist's office, where a scentscape designed for relaxation could be integrated to decrease the patient's anxiety and stress before their appointment. The possibilities are as endless as the range of building programs we encounter as architects, and the scentscapes can contribute to occupant comfort on a psychophysiological level. What if each person created their own scentscape based on their personal habits and lifestyle? Their home could support their daily rituals and release odors into the space based on their personal needs and preferences. These scentscapes could support our natural sleep-wake cycles and help to optimize our circadian rhythm. By introducing scentscapes into the built environment, architects could create a new world of wayfinding. Spaces become identifiable by their specific scents, creating alternative memory associations for visitors to remember their location within the building as well as programmatic functions. Designing scentscapes for navigation provides olfactory cues for those with visual impairments, thus improving the equitable accessibility of architecture. Odor emotional memory has the power to establish a relationship between people and place. Scentscapes can contribute to placemaking in architecture by creating olfactory experiences and shared social references. Thus, people can feel more connected to a specific place through these memories created by the scentscape.
This investigation into olfactory architecture reveals a range of opportunities to improve occupant health, wellness, and experience if we tap into the underrepresented sense of smell. Thus, we must challenge the hierarchy in architectural practice to create sensory-rich environments that support our daily lives. Why should we continue to accept living and working in artificial environments that suppress our biological senses? We must take action to break the sensory hierarchy and develop environments that support our innate human needs. I implore you to look around at your own living and working environments, identify areas in which you can improve the sensory quality of the space, and take these lessons with you into your future practice. Thank you.